Welcome to Washington Courts Report, the official podcast of the Administrative Office of the Courts. Today, I'm continuing our series discussing Part 2 with the Innovating Justice Awards, and today I'm joined by Quinn, Dalan, Executive Director for Central Washington Legal Aid, and Commissioner Wendy Winfield, a Commissioner for City of Yakima Municipal Courts, formerly of Central Washington Legal Aid. For just a bit of background, the Innovating Justice Award recognizes an individual or group for providing exceptional leadership in helping courts across Washington state deliver innovative and responsive justice using a race equity lens. So, the BJA, the Board for Judicial Administration, uses various criteria to determine the award recipients that include promoting race equity and access to justice, providing exceptional leadership that goes above and beyond what is expected, and applied innovative and community-driven court system responses. So today I'm with Wendy and Quinn to discuss some of their impacts starting up the Yakima Courthouse Clinic, which has been doing really great work in Yakima for a few years now. So just to get started, Quinn, will you tell me a little bit about what the Courthouse Clinic is and what function it serves for the community?
Yes, happy to. Thanks, Patrick. I will walk you through the changes. So when we first started, the Yakima County Superior Court had a status conference. So anybody who filed a family law matter was given a court date to appear in 90 days later, just to check in on people and see how they were doing. What the court was figuring out is that almost all of those people would show back up 90 days later, ready to be divorced, most of them, and there was no one to fill out paperwork. They certainly were not bringing in their paperwork. They didn't know that they needed to bring in a final order of any kind. And they were being told they needed more forms and being given a new court date, kind of over and over again. So when we started, we would pull the calendar and be in court with forms, final orders, forms, anything that was needed, primarily just to help people finalize their cases when they were ready to default or in agreement. So really looking at joinders and defaults, or where there wasn't necessarily a joinder or the proof of service, but both parties showed up and happened to be in agreement, and we could just go through the paperwork together and get their signatures on it. And so everyone was able to immediately resolve their family law matter when they came. So there was no more continuances. People were not when they were confused, there was an immediate legal response to the confusion. Now that Courthouse Clinic has morphed into outside of the courthouse, or outside of the courtroom, but still in the courthouse, in the basement of the courthouse on the second and fourth Fridays of every month from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And there's no appointments needed. You're just dropping in when you're ready with a quick legal question or ready to finalize forms. And then family court is still going on some motions. So we work with the current commissioner to send them up, have them sit where they need to sit, and they will get their legal paperwork done. Their divorce is finalized or their parenting plan is finalized, and they get to leave the courthouse feeling good.
Okay, and just to clarify, so before this, a lot of these parties were going back to the courthouse over and over again, likely spending hours trying to get their divorce finalized and just weren't quite aware how to complete the form. So that's where you stepped in, or the
not aware that they had to complete the forms, not aware that they had forms to complete. I think one of the first couple of weeks that we were there, I made contact with an individual that I knew was ready by all accounts to finalize. And I always ask people, did you bring any paperwork with you? And so I think she handed me like the findings of facts, but not the decree. And I was like, is this all that you have? And she's like, yes, I've been here like 3 times and I think I finally did it right. I was like, oh, you didn't, but it's okay because I have a decree. I'll fill out your decree and then we can get you done. And so I would say, just one, it cleared out some bottlenecks. Probably every week we were finalizing anywhere from 6 to 8 cases. And so those were people who didn't have to come back, didn't get lost in the system, got to just resolve so the court could focus on cases that were not going to resolve by agreement. But just the relief. Usually it was a really fun clinic because Usually everyone was like, yes, I'm getting divorced today. Like they were just, it was happy court all over again, which normally
That's what you
family
love to see.
court is not. Yeah, normally family court is not happy court.
Yeah, absolutely. And so not only helping these, often pro se, self represented litigants finishing up their cases, but also helping the judges so much, right? Clearing up their docket. Wendy, did you have anything to add to that?
Not really. I mean, Quinn gave a really good summary of it. And then, once they got rid of status conferences, we just transferred it to basically a kind of a 2-hour basement clinic. And that one we did every other Friday, just because of basically some personnel constraints. But, and another thing we always did is we brought our own interpreter with us. And once in a while, when she wasn't available, we'd, find either a volunteer to help interpret, or sometimes we'd be able to, even get a little help from the courthouse interpreter, but she's very busy and in demand there, so hard to get. So that was another thing we did. And just, not only filling out people's final documents, but just going over them with people quickly so they understand, what is in it, what's not in it. They understand, where to go, as far as like if they need a name change, or, what next steps. Because a lot of people we found just kind of expect that stuff's automatic, or they would say, well, I already filed my paperwork. And and we'd always ask, well, do you mean your initial petition? And, a lot of them just weren't aware what forms they needed. Our clerk's office sells those forms, but we would provide them for free. And because even sometimes that can be a barrier for people just having to pay for the forms, or some of them purchased a book, but it didn't have all the forms that they needed. Quinn said, it was a really satisfying clinic. A lot of times in family law, there's a lot of feelings involved, and people can, be very unhappy, or times, obviously in a default situation, you're getting whatever you ask for, but sometimes in order to come to an agreement, or they're falling somewhere in the middle, or they're getting a judge's decision that's somewhere in the middle. So the clinic was really nice, that people were really happy, and it was kind of fun because it was on a Friday. Everybody got to tell people, congratulations, you're now single, go go out and have fun. And I think people really appreciated it. And we would also get some random questions here and there about kind of somewhat unrelated stuff, like maybe an adult guardianship or something. And the nice thing at Central Washington Legal Aid is we would usually, any kind of legal issue that might come up, even if it's something that maybe Quinn or I couldn't answer, we could, at least get him a consult somewhere else. So, a lot of the times we were able to do that too, kind of as a general just catch-all to help people finish up their family law cases.
Sorry, I will just say, you asked about the judges. I think Commissioner Silverthorn, now Judge Silverthorn, was often torn when people would show up ready to go and kind of be frustrated about, do I sit up here on this bench and fill out their forms for them, right? Which, of course, not his job, and he does not have time for that when there are, 40 cases on the calendar. And so it did free up his time, and he knew who was ready to go, and he could take them, kind of as it fit into his calendar. So I think that was really helpful.
And that's a great segue. We should give a very quick and deserved shout out to Judge Shane Silverthorn, who helped start up this Yakima Courthouse Clinic. Couldn't join us today, but he was one of the recipients of the Innovating Justice Awards, so he was very important to this. And just going off some of what Wendy said, want to also absolutely acknowledge how big bringing the interpreter is into this, because, these court forms and processes, as we've acknowledged, are hard enough if you speak the language fluently. For someone who doesn't, it's that much more confusing. So just making sure to cover those gaps seems absolutely huge. And this has been going on for a few years now. You received the Innovating Justice Award in 2024. This has been going on since 2022, I believe you told me. Will you tell me a little bit, Wendy, about how this got started?
So I think we initially started the clinic, as I recall, it was sometime around November of 2022. And I'd started my position as the family support attorney at Central Washington Legal Aid, which was then Yakima County Volunteer Attorney Services, around April of that year. And Quinn gave me a lot of discretion to kind of decide like how I could best help people. And one of the big issues we noticed is there was kind of an endless need for pro se family law litigants, just needed some help to finish up their divorces. A lot of them, there wasn't a lot of assets involved, maybe a lot of them, there was either not a fight or an agreed parenting plan. And so they just needed help filling out forms. And we found out that was a way just showing up to the status docket. I think initially Judge Silverthorn was the one who suggested that as a way to kind of wanted to have some sort of presence in the courthouse. And he said, hey, why don't you show up to status conferences? And we were able to work it out with him where we would get that docket a couple days ahead of time so we could look over it. So when we showed up with the docket, we knew, who was ready for default, who appeared to be agreed, who had an issue with service or some other simple thing we could fix. Or sometimes, it was just send them to the dispute resolution center to see if they could get out, or how to ask for a trial to be set. I'm sorry, that's my dog's breathing loud, but
no worries at all. He's a third guest to the podcast today.
Yeah, there's two of them actually. So.
Oh, okay. So it's a 4-person one today.
3 and 4, but Quinn and I found it was just a really good use of our time. We were able to, like Quinn was saying, sometimes finalize 6 to 8 divorces in one day. And sometimes that was just one of us there doing all those. And we had some help with filling out forms. And obviously our interpreter, Esmeralda, was also was familiar with the forms and would help with them, and just taking that time to go over them with people so people kind of understand at least what's going on, and they'd be able to finish up their divorces that day. So that was a service where people were really appreciative of it. And like, we had a lot of happy customers there, which is always nice in family law.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? If you can send people off on a Friday happy and feeling like they can come to the court one less time or be done with it, that's the goal, right? Speaking of all these happy customers, Quinn, I know you're currently working with it. Do you have an estimate for how many people you've helped finalize their court cases, or even how many people have come through the clinic in its time?
I would say my estimate is probably 250 people from the time we started to now. We are not seeing the same volume of people forced to come in for a status conference necessarily. But yeah, I think at least somewhere between 2 to 250 would probably be a safe estimate.
That's fantastic. That's that many people who can move on with their lives, move on to the next step, and hopefully leave your courthouse happy, as you said. Well, one thing I want to segue into a little bit is with the Innovating Justice Awards, they're really for those who go above and beyond for their work. And I want to ask both of you, so we'll start with Quinn, what really motivates you to go above and beyond in your work? Because this isn't just, a checking the box type of deal with Courthouse Clinic. This really is doing the extra step for the community.
I mean, I like to think every lawyer probably gets into the practice of law to make a difference, and then just they go their different ways, and they hopefully feel like they make a difference in whatever career field they choose. For me, I love Yakima, and I love the community here. And if there's there were Fridays where it was busy, right? And it was a little exhausting when you walked out of that courthouse. But also, in the scheme of things, closing out 6 family law cases in a couple of hours with a law degree is just so satisfying. It's just proof that this degree I have, this work I've put into doing this can make just a real difference for a family in the community that I call home. And that to me is why you go above and beyond, because it's important and it feels good. And if everyone just does bare minimum, there's just a lot of people in this community that struggle. And I think if you're not on the margins and you have the ability to help those who are living on the margins or unable to navigate the courthouse, then what are you doing if you're not helping those people? So that's, I guess, my thoughts on it.
That's fantastic. And that's really what it's all about, right? And I think we all know, and likely most of our listeners know, exactly how much work is being put in to get those law degrees. So to see them go in a direction like this is honestly really inspiring. Wendy, what about you? What really pushes you to go above and beyond in your field and do something like the Courthouse Clinic?
Like Quinn said, it was just really satisfying work. You were just in there problem solving. I mean, there's a lot of days where, one of us, sometimes you're there by yourself, like Quinn's very busy So sometimes it would just be like me and one interpreter, and we're together trying to get through like 8 divorces, half of them with an interpreter, go over all their documents. And it was, and even just the commitment of just once you're there every Friday, you have to have someone there every Friday because people are showing up expecting this help. And it was something we worked hard on to make sure one of us was there, or if it was a week where we obviously at the time worked at the same place. So once when we had a conference or something on a Friday, and to get a volunteer there just so we had some coverage, or at least had someone that maybe if it wasn't something they could help with right there, that they could send them to us so we could get them finalized. Because I mean, honestly, in Yakima County, like I would say probably close to 80% of the divorces are pro se or divorces and parenting plans. And so it's like, how do you, as a small office with, as far as our family law team, I was probably the only full-time dedicated person. Quinn's our executive director. She's familiar with family law, helps out a lot. Our interpreter Esmeralda, who is with us, she's also great and had some, ability to fill out forms, but it's still a really small team. And it took a lot of work and dedication to like consistently provide this service every week. And, obviously when we transitioned to the basement clinic, we did that every other week, but, that was sort of less people, but I think a lot of the clients that came into that clinic sometimes needed more help or would come in for a lot of different things. Like we'd even have people come in for stuff like adult guardianships or minor guardianships, which the clinic wasn't really geared towards. But if we can get those people in and get them to where they can get those services or get them a consult with someone, I think Quinn and I are both good problem solvers. And that was something we really were constantly evaluating it, and thinking of ways we could do things better, like making sure we had all our forms with us and had clipboards and pens. And I mean, just bringing all the stuff to like set up in the courthouse, so it's just kind of a lot of the little stuff that takes that dedication to like, be there every Friday morning, bring all this stuff, prep the docket, know who's going to be there, find them, sort out who's there and who's not. And but it was really rewarding to be able to help that many people, especially in such a short period of time. Like Quinn said, I think we finalized hundreds of divorces and parenting plans. I don't think that a week we were there that we didn't finalize at least a couple of cases that, otherwise would have been kind of going along through the system in limbo, or we'd see ones where they get to the point where the case just got dismissed because no one ever went in to finalize it. And so we found that a lot of them were ready to finalize by default or agreement, and they just needed someone to help fill out the paperwork and go over it with them so that at least, had a basic understanding and knowledge of what's in them.
Absolutely. And I think that's just showing exactly why you received the award. It's so much extra work. It's, putting in that work to make sure the community helps that they can move on. And I know clearly I'm impressed by it. Clearly the Board for Judicial Administration was impressed by it. And I want to talk a little bit more. Quinn, though I'm not on the committee personally, I think it's relatively safe to say one of the reasons that you were not included on the recipients for the awards is because you were actually the nominator for the awards. You nominated Wendy and Judge Silverthorn, which obviously I think puts you in a slightly different role there. So one thing I wanted to ask you is, what did you really see from Commissioner Winfield and from Judge Silverthorn that really said, this deserves the Innovating Justice Award? This is exactly what I see when I think going above and beyond and innovating justice.
Yeah, I mean, I think both parties could, certainly Wendy could have said, nope, that's not my job. We get no grant funding from the courthouse. We don't get any money from the county. Like, I will take cases who come in to see me and that's it. I don't need to schlep into the courthouse and set up a way to finalize hundreds of cases in any given year. And also, I mean, just even every Friday morning is a lift, right? And so I think Wendy could have easily said, no, thank you. I'm very uninterested in doing that. And the other piece is that when it wasn't Judge Silverthorn on the calendar, it was a different So if he ever left for on vacation, it was a different experience, right? Judge Silverthorn just worked so well with us. He told us what we could do to, make things smoother. Anytime we talked to him about things that could be done smoother, there would be forms, brochures in the courthouse that were in English, and I would get them translated and give them back. And the next time we were there, Judge Silverthorn would have them printed off and ready for Spanish speaking litigants. It was hectic, but it was a smooth running ship between Commissioner Winfield and Judge Silverthorn. And I think that was evidenced by when they couldn't be there. The dockets did not go as smoothly when a different judicial officer was there and present. So, and then same, I would drown without Wendy. So I think both of them didn't have to do this. They didn't have to work together. They didn't have to try and put as much best practice into place and improve the clinic. But they did, right? There were times when we realized it would benefit us to be in there early. And so the clerk would let us in, or, Judge Silverthorn would say they can come in early and set up. And, there just were a lot of moving parts and just two really dedicated people that made such an incredible difference in the family law, the domestic calendar in Yakima County. And so I thought that one, people should know about what we're doing. Hopefully, I've talked to a couple of people since getting the award and just said, here's what we did. Here's how I would replicate it in your county, or here's things you might want to try, or here's lessons that are learned. So hopefully if other people can do it, I think it's a great barrier reducer, but obviously not everyone's doing it. And I just thought people should know about the work that Commissioner Silverthorn and Wendy were doing. And so I submitted them for the award.
Yeah, I mean, I think if there's such great work that's helping so many people, it's absolutely right that people know about it. Not only to recognize, you, Commissioner Winfield, Judge Silverthorn, which is well-deserved, but also to hopefully inspire others to do something similar would absolutely be a huge benefit. Jumping to the other side a little bit, Commissioner Winfield, when you received this award and were recognized in this way for your, role in helping innovate justice to Yakima, how did that feel? I know it's not why you do the work, but it has to be at least a little bit validating, right?
The real, joy I got out of it was helping so many people. But it was wonderful to be recognized. It's a huge honor. I'll say Quinn's was a very supportive executive director, and I always appreciate. She always we always saw pretty eye to eye as far as like our vision and stuff. And I feel like she always supported me and helped me kind of make it come to life, because Quinn's just like an amazing problem solver. And Quinn's the kind of person where instead of asking, why should we do this? It's like, well, why can't we do this? Like, why don't we, how we can make this happen? And so, a lot of it was really thanks to Quinn. And she always, and like Quinn said, having Judge Silverthorn being so involved when he was then the commissioner handling that family law docket, that was a huge part of the success too, because that allowed us to just little stuff like getting let into the courtroom a little earlier, getting the docket on Wednesday instead of Thursday. So we had time to look at it in between. I was still meeting with other clients in the office and stuff like that. And so, but yeah, it feels great to get this award, and I'm just really honored to get it. And I'm not someone who definitely likes a lot of attention. So it's honestly sort of weird to like get a big award and I know they announced it at the family law conference, which I think I was gone or something, so I couldn't be there. I think Quinn and Judge Silverthorn maybe were like on Zoom for it, but it's, even just doing this podcast now, I'm like, I guess it really was kind of like a big deal. But
absolutely, it was. It's helping hundreds of people.
You're just kind of slogging through it, trying to help as many people as you can. And it's great to get recognized for doing that work.
Yeah, and the recognition is well-deserved. And I think it's great that I was recognized at the Family Law Conference. So, in it for all the right reasons is what I liked here. Quinn, did you have anything to add when you heard your team was being recognized? You're one of the big founders of this Courthouse Clinic. How did you feel when you heard the group was receiving the awards?
I just thought it was well deserved for Wendy and or Commissioner Winfield and Judge Silverthorn. And I also just think there's something about being all the way over in Yakima, Washington, small rural town. I think sometimes it's tempting to forget that there's communities living and thriving on the other side of the I-5 corridor. And so, knowing that this was a state award, it felt good that my team and, people I worked with were being recognized for doing really good work, but not in, King County or, Pierce County, but just over here in Little Yakima. I feel like extra nice to get a state award since we're over here and just in this small community in the center of the state.
Yeah, justice is justice on the east or west side, right? Well, that's just great to hear. It was well deserved, and I just want to thank you both for the work you've been doing to help hundreds of people throughout Yakima. And thank you again for joining me on the podcast today. Is there anyone you'd like to shout out or anything else you'd like to add on? Wendy, we can start with you.
Oh, well, I'd just like to say thank you so much for having us on the podcast today. It was a pleasure talking about the Courthouse Clinic. And again, I just appreciate this award that Judge Silverthorn and I received so much. As you know, and like I said, I consider Quinn part of that. So, I mean, honestly, my big thanks is to Quinn for she was an integral part of this whole clinic and just for nominating us and getting us this recognition. I really appreciate it. And yeah, just, I'm just thankful for all my, my former coworkers at Central Washington Legal Aid. And I'll see them sometime this year for some volunteering. I'm not a full-time judicial officer, so I do still have a law license, but not quite full-time. But yeah, no, I just, a big thanks to yourself, Patrick, for having us, and Quinn for being such a big part of this whole project. And of course, Judge Silverthorn as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And yeah, we appreciate having you on. Quinn, what about you? Anyone you'd like to shout out or anything last things you'd like to leave off on?
Yeah, we have mentioned Esmeralda a couple of times, but Esmeralda Mora is our pro bono program coordinator at Central Washington Legal Aid. She was there for, I think, almost every Friday, if not every Friday,
Yes,
interpreting
good catch, Quinn, because
interpreting.
I meant to shout out Esmeralda because she was like our interpreter. She helped with forms. I mean, and Esmeralda really came to us with no, prior legal experience, and she really embraced it and was, there ready to go every Friday and always the most enthusiastic out of all of us.
Yeah. So Esmeralda, she was our Spanish speaker. She helped with forms. Certainly a valuable asset to the team. And then we had a couple of volunteers that we did not pay. We're not lawyers, so I will shout out Tessa Fresco and Nellie Dellinger, who donated a lot of their time to come in and fill out forms that we then could spend our time reviewing the forms and making sure they're accurate and talking to clients. Because obviously it would be very hard to process 6 to 8 in a couple of hours if you did not have all hands on deck. And so I think those would be the 3 people that I would give a shout out to.
Oh yeah, and great catch on Nellie was actually our volunteer of the year she was helping us, and then she actually moved into being a legal assistant at an office with an attorney that Quinn and I both know, but possible future lawyer there. But she was a great help, and Tessa was a volunteer we had that was on her college break, and she also she actually, after she ended her internship with us, she kept coming on Fridays because she had so much fun.
That's awesome.
And they were such a huge help just helping us with all the paperwork.
Okay. Well, it takes a whole village to get an effort like this underway, right? So really glad we were able to recognize them. Well deserved. And feels like a little bit of everyone's awards, right? All the work
100%.
That went into it. So with that, I'm going to end us off for this episode. Once again, thank you so much, Quinn and Commissioner Winfield, for coming on the show. And thank you again for the work you're doing for Innovating Justice in Yakima. You have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, you too. Thank you so much for having us.